All right, let's go ahead and begin. I'm sure a few people will be dropping in. We're excited to be back for this third in the four-part series that includes both a kickoff as well as sort of a presentation of technical features, and we hope beginning today, a little bit of a workshop, so that those of you who have begun to build your simulation, you can show us your progress to date, and you can tell us what questions you're coming up with, what issues you're coming up with, whether or not they're conceptual, like, should I, organize everything by council district, or, anything really, just to kind of give you all a chance to sort of talk about what your experience has been so far, and then to kind of talk through it as a group. And I think that could be a really powerful learning experience, and also, to be honest, just a little bit encouraging to those of you who haven't started yet to say, hey, I can do this. It's really not that intimidating at all. We've also got a really nice announcement that will come about halfway through the session that I think you'll also really appreciate as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and also just reminded everybody that this is being recorded, and this, like really all the other things that we're producing for you, are available through a shared folder that Garrett has sent out a few times, so that you can reference all this stuff and also see the help articles that we're creating for you, and other resources as well. So just to remind you, because we want this to be sort of a peer-to-peer learning opportunity, I just want you to know that who we are. We're Balancing Act, and your team includes the four of us: myself, Dan Ferguson, the software engineer, Amy Flynn, who's director of sales, but she's also doing customer support in this particular one because there's so many of you, and also because she's a Bay Area resident. And then Garrett Hernandez-Reimer, who is the #1 point person to you in terms of technical support. The agenda for today is, in just a moment, we'll be asking those of you who've begun to tell us what your experiences have been, and if you're having any issues, or just things that you want to think through. And hopefully there'll be a lot of those. I know that sometimes people are a little reluctant to share works in progress, but we want this to be an opportunity for you to actually do that, and to get input from each other, as well as from the Balancing Act team. And then we've got this a really nice update on HES and GeoJSON. I think that's actually going to be really fun, and so Dan is going to show you some stuff, as well as Samaya. I really just kind of give you a preview of what's coming. And then Garrett is going to spend the last portion of today continuing to just walk you through the features. And so not all of you are going to need all of the features, but we just want you to know what's there and how to use them. And it's really not too intimidating, but that's why we're just going to walk you through it. But in particular, we're going to talk about the settings. And then we'll talk about next steps and what we'll be working on with our fourth and really final of the kind of like workshop, the makers workshop, sometimes we call them, that will be this time next week. But then we'll also talk about some additional learning and support opportunities moving forward after that. So that's the plan. Any questions, issues? All right. Good. And then so this last one, for those of you who joined late, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself in chat, but also in you can hover over your picture on Zoom, and there's 3 dots, and there's a place where you can rename yourself. So you don't need to rename yourself, but if you wouldn't mind just adding in the jurisdictions that you're representing. If you're a consultant, try to squeeze in all of them if you can, just so we can kind of see who's here, and have a little bit of context for whatever questions we might get. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great. And now, this is really the workshop opportunity. So once again, what we're looking for here is not finished products, it's for works in progress. And just for you to kind of show us, what it's been like to build your simulation, issues, et cetera. And I know that Andy Flower from EMC and some of his team have been working on simulations for both the town of Fairfax and the city of Cupertino, and they have been willing to sort of share their progress, and we thought we'd just sort of start with them and sort of let them share the experiences they're having. And I bet the questions they're coming up with would be questions that might be shared, but we don't want to just limit it to them. So if others of you are also willing to share your progress, or stumbling blocks or whatever, please do that as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Andy, if you want to pull yours up, go right ahead.
Andy is working on a couple of different cities, so he's Cupertino and Fairfax and Larkspur.
What I can do is bring up what I have in the HES HES tool for Fairfax, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and your voice is awfully soft, Andy.
Huh.
It seems that way to me.
I'll try to speak up. Is that better?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay, good. So for Fairfax, we've got all of our sites selected. We're a little further along in the process than with some of our other communities. This is one of the things we've noticed with ABAG. Sometimes with the HES tool, sometimes the sites shows up and sometimes it doesn't, but it heartens me to see that there is the 43 there. So when I look into the reports, it should show up.
Duly noted, Andy. I'll ask our data viz team why the purple is not shown up.
Yeah.
I was hoping it would work perfectly today, but
yeah. And Andy, I just have to tell you, this is actually terrific that you're linking this with HES. And so Samaya, please feel free to jump in, because we have not really talked about HES as this group. I know that others of you in other contexts have, but this is actually terrific. And it's really following on, the interest that we had last week in having a direct connection with HES, and what Samaya and Dan are going to talk about in a little bit here. So this is great.
So we're looking forward to the possibility of having these exported as GeoJSONs so that we can get started with our balancing act. We have an outline of how we know we want the all of the criteria to be labeled, but we're visual people, so we're excited to be able to integrate all of it together. We do have GeoJSONs for Cupertino, and I can speak briefly about our process for that if you'd like.
Sure.
Great. Well, so within their general plan, they have special areas and they have neighborhoods, and what we realized in talking with staff is that across all of those, we have every piece of the city covered in geography. So rather than going with numbers of units or with density, because this is a very early step, and we're helping our process to be as transparent as possible all the way through. So we're gonna try this, Chris. So hopefully it works. We're gonna go with 100%, and so people can choose different areas and raise it with 5% increments for each one. So right now we're just trying to get to the patterns. We know we're going to have hundreds of people participating in this, if not, up to 1,000, we're hoping, but there's at least that much interest in participating in the process. So simultaneous to our decision makers having an opportunity to think about the whole of the city, we're also opening that up to the public generally. So we're excited to see what might come out of that. Our workshop for that is December 9th. Our Fairfax workshop is November 20th. So it's a bit of a wing and a prayer here. We're setting things up and putting out the announcements prior to really having a handle on this. But we're confident working with you and hopeful that that this will be meaningful to the public. Chris, I think you're muted.
Yeah, anything else? Any difficulties that you've encountered or questions that might be of general interest?
Just looking forward to the idea of having this import, the possibility of, now that we've selected these within the HES tool, the idea that that would just get integrated in, or at least that we would have GeoJSON files. One question I have is that you can see that we have particular parcels within Fairfax, and our goal is to speak of areas generally. So I have a feeling that once we get to that place, we're probably going to be drawing, which is great to be able to have that opportunity within the Balancing Act tool, so that drawing to be inclusive of several parcels at once.
That's great. And you're anticipating the next discussion. So that's fantastic, Andy. Good. Wendy, do you have a comment on this or a new issue that you wanted to share?
No, I don't have a comment, but I saw something in the chat. If someone wants to share what they're working on, to raise their hand.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
whenever
you're
ready, I can do that.
I think so. That'd be great.
Okay.
And I think you can share your screen if you want to kind of give us a visual.
Okay. So can you see my screen that says balancing act?
Yes.
Okay. Woohoo! So then I've created a simulation. I haven't done too much yet. For the housing requirements, I've added my RENA allocation, which in the city of Sonoma is 311. Some of you might think that's hilarious that it's so low, but it's a big number for us. And then for housing choices, our city is broken up into different zoning districts. And so I've added all that. And then when you go to the preview site, I've also added a map that isn't coming up. But maybe I turned it off. So then you can see for my RENA numbers, I've added what the different income levels are.
Oh, nice.
And then you can add, I locked the RENA allocation. So people who want to do a lot of affordable housing or more than what our RENA is requiring, they can't change that. And then going down, here then on our density allocation, if you click on the caret, if you think that you want more housing units in the downtown district, can increase anything by 5 increments. So I've just been playing around with it, and Garrett helped me a lot. Thank you so much. But that's where I'm at so far.
That's great. And
Yeah.
I just gotta ask you, has it been painful or is it coming along okay?
Well, I've had moments of pain, and then I reached out to Garrett, and in my frustration, he was able to understand what I needed, and he helped me. And I'm really looking forward to figuring out how to upload the geo-SOMs, whatever they're called.
Right.
I'm really excited about that, but it's fun. It's nice to get to work on a project that's fun. I mean, not that my job isn't fun most of the time, but this is I like it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Dave Driscoll, who some of you know, he actually said the same thing. He said, you know, this is actually kind of fun. So for the users. So once again, hoping that will generate a lot of good public input that's informed by facts and constraints and context and so forth. So thank you for sharing that, Wendy. And then you did have a generalized question that came up, and I don't know who the right person is to talk about it, but it was just about how you get a GeoJSON out of your ArcGIS software, I guess. And I think, and how did that go? Did that question get resolved for you or answered for you?
No, Garrett pretty much told me we were going to talk about it today, so I thought I'd wait and ask questions afterwards. I was asking a lot of questions yesterday that were going to come up today, so I think maybe I got a little ahead of myself.
No, that's fine. And then I do want to make clear that if any of the rest of you have other questions or comments or issues you want to share, that you can. But I think I don't see any other hands. So I might just go ahead and go to Samaya, because I think she actually took part of that question as well. And I think, sort of came up with, an approach or a couple approaches that can help with that. So Samaya, do you want to take over and say a little bit here?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So what I'm really appreciating about this tool is that there's a lot of different, as far as the mapping aspect goes, is that there's like all of these different options for folks with different comfort levels and different resources, right? So I think that we've been having a lot of conversations about how to use HEST, which is a tool that a lot of folks are already using and that everybody in this room has access to through ABAG. And that is really like, if you don't have ArcGIS, if you don't have like GeoJSON is like not something that you have any kind of touch with, this is probably a good option for you. If you are using ArcGIS, you may have an easier option. So I just wanted to just sort of put that out from the get-go. But for those who are not using ArcGIS or who don't have sort of GeoJSON data easily extractable, what you can do is log into your HEST tool account. And for anybody who does not have a HES Tool account yet, I am happy to put the sort of sign up link in the chat. But what that looks like is when you log in, you will see a map of your jurisdiction. I think I'm currently logged into Los Gatos. I always try to like see who's in the room. So I think I saw Andy and I chose Los Gatos. This is, you can see here, they have the purple sites are kind of the sites that you are quote unquote selecting. So again, this tool has a bunch of other data that's helpful for just kind of your research of these sites and whether or not you really even want to put them before the public based on kind of their zoning and their underlying physical characteristics. But once you've vetted a site, once you've decided you do want to use it in Balancing Act, you can sort of click on it, and I'll just do a random one as an example. Once you click on it, you'll see it come up on the side as a selected parcel. And then you can, you can look at more details, kind of just take a closer look at the data that we have in here for that site. But really what's relevant to Balancing Act is there's this thing called add. You can add to lists, right? And you can do multiple at a time. Say I've like looked at this cluster and I want to add all 5. I can do that. And I'm just going to click add. And I'll delete these, Andy, just so that you don't have this weird cluster in your list that you have no intention of using. But then when you go to my list, you'll see all of those sites that you selected on the side. And you'll see those sites show up as purple now to track that you have selected them in your My Sites. And then we've been working with Dan and Chris to see how they might be able to basically take what you've done here and then suck it into Balancing Act. And it seems like they found like a pretty nice, elegant and easy solution for that. So that's the demo on my side. I see there is somebody sent me a question. Is there some sort of HES Tool training I can take? We did do a training a couple weeks ago that we recorded that I'm happy to send out. So I will send that out. And there's also on this, on the tool itself, there's something called the Quick Start Guide. If you click on that, there's a bunch of sort of like written guidance and videos to show you how to do certain things. And so that'll be really helpful. And I think the one probably most relevant to this is, actually, all of these probably talk about adding it to your list, but this, if you want to say generate a list of selected sites in HCD site inventory form, that one is probably the most direct link if you want to watch that video and see how that works. But it's just as simple as what I just showed you. And so I'm happy to take any questions or just pass the mic to Dan to show what it looks like on the Balancing Act side.
Yeah, that's great. And I just noticed that Leah dropped in the training video. And I think, from what I understand, 80 or 90 of the ABAG jurisdictions have already registered for HES, but I think there is a registration link for it as well. And maybe somebody who has that can drop that into chat as well. But it's really nice to be able to show the utility of HES. And then we're not done with the development on our side, but we actually have a really nice pathway. And Dan's going to show you that in just a moment. But what I really like about it is that this is designed from the perspective of you as the users in mind. And so the complicated stuff is happening out of sight. But Dan is, I think, going to give you a quick screen share on our staging server, not our production server that you're all on, but on our staging server of what he's developing.
Yeah, thank you, Chris and Sumaya. So basically, I'm logged in as if I were Oakland here, and I've set up the connection between HES and Oakland. So it's as simple as going to edit one of the options that you've set up, one of the housing options, and now you got a new button up here, Add HES Site. Just tap it. And if you don't see it, it's because we haven't got you set up for this, just to let us know. Once it's out, it'll be another week or so. Anyway, so it's bringing up this list. I can start typing to search, and I'm going to type 633 because I know I want this one. And you just click it, and it adds it. Can't be much easier than that. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and just show you that it has added it to our map. And it's going to zoom in on that one shape since there's only one. There it is. Now we'll add I'm going to go back into that same subcategory, and I'm going to actually add a second one because you're not limited to just one. So for this one, I want to go for Coliseum Way because it's adjacent. And there it is. Save that one as well. And we'll just flip back over to our preview and see if it's there. There it is.
Wow.
Okay.
And Dan, we just had a question. Will this work with sites that have an APN rather than an address?
Yes, it
Correct.
will. That's one of the things that remain to be built, but yes, it will. So when you go into add has sites, you will see addresses, and if there's no address, it will show up as an APN. And my plan is that you'll be able to search by APN and get any of them, or by address and get those that have addresses. Any other questions on this before I turn it back over to Garrett?
And even ideas. I mean, you know, one thing I have to say, it's been really nice to work with the ABAG folks and discover how accessible Hess is, and to you know, to sort of, you know, what we think is make a pretty simple interface. But I'd love to just hear from folks. Does this seem like a simple interface, and can you see yourself using this? And if not, what could we possibly do at this point to improve that? And Kevin, I see that your hand is up.
My question is, so say you, rather than want to have the participants do density on each of these, but to have them as one area of map together, can you merge them once you uploaded both of them separately?
We don't have that built in. That wasn't part of the feature set that we were building. But the answer is yes, there are ways you can merge these shapes together. It's really, you know, it's a matter of looking at this and kind of combining them. There's probably tools that do that. I don't know that we're going to build one, but that's probably something ArcGIS and similar apps could do.
Yeah, I don't know if it's important at this moment, but it did cross my mind, because sometimes the parcels are really small and kind of generally would be grouped together in whatever kind of changes you make to your regulations. So yeah, that's where I was coming from.
But just so you know, as I've done here, these will now move in unison. Basically, they'll act as one. The density will be reflected on both. I've got one of them added twice. That's why it looks twice as thick. But even if there's a border between them, they'll still kind of act like one shape. So if you're not able to merge them, just sticking them all adjacent to each other will get you most of the way there. That there will be two separate labels. It's not ideal, but that's what we have so far.
Yeah.
Any other questions before I hand it off?
I have a question from someone. How were you able to import the Hess list into Balancing Act?
Yeah, so that's something that we'll set up the connection and enable. So basically all you'll have to do is once it's set up, you'll see this button, and when you click it, you'll see your My List. So we'll take care of that for you. You won't have to worry about that. Once this is available, it should be available to all of you.
Yeah, so I would just flag that, like, in the meantime, while Balancing Act is working on creating that connection, if folks are eager to get started, you could always go into Hess and actually start adding your sites there while that connection is being made on the back end. And if folks, like, I'm curious, Andy, I know that you had reached out about like having us upload your sites for you, but it looks like, those 42, did you just go in and do that on your own?
Yes.
Or, okay, so that's always an option. You can always go in and just select those sites on your own, just one by one. And it's pretty easy and simple. I'm curious, Andy, how long it took you. But if you really do have a lot of sites that you would rather just kind of have us upload in bulk, you can email us a list of addresses or APNs that we can then on the back end try to upload for you. And, you know, you may be able to do it faster if it's a small amount of sites. But yeah, I'm curious, Andy, how long it took.
Well, the difficulty is there's a little bit of nervousness because I would have some sites disappear.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. It's easy enough to select them, but sometimes when I'm going back and forth, I lose them, and I don't know if I think when I was working with the Larkspur site, I think
Mhm.
maybe that happened because my guess is maybe because both I and the director, Neil Toff, had it open at the same time. Maybe I closed mine before he closed his. So I want to put it out there, be careful of that. But then it did also happen with the Fairfax. I thought I recalled from the workshop that it's important to go into the data and to hit the edit tool and say save changes within that. So just to be extra careful, that's what I did with Fairfax because I wanted to make sure I had it ready for today.
Yeah, what I'm curious, Andy, when you say they disappeared, do you mean that you were the next time you came into Hess, they were no longer selected?
Correct. Sometimes one with Larkspur, it was the next time I came in, and I did write a feedback
Good. Okay.
message about it because I know that's important to your team.
Yeah, no, that shouldn't be happening. So let's make sure that make sure we look into that issue and get it resolved. It's good to know that maybe that you all were working on it at the same time. I mean, it should be updating in real time for all users. But then again, it's like if you added a site and then your director removed that site, then like I don't know, like I have no, I'm not sure how that would.
I wonder if it's just having two things open at the same time. So if it just did an overwrite, maybe saved his over mine and his, but I hear what you're saying. It should be in real time, but it did happen again with the Fairfax where I selected it and then I moved around to reports or something. And when I came back, it was not, it was a lesser number. I had to go back. So I just want to give everybody a heads up that it might take a little bit of massaging, but if you make sure you save changes within the data piece of it, that seemed to lock it in.
Okay, good.
Gotcha.
That's terrific. So there's a question in the chat about when is this going to be ready? So I have to say this has gone at phenomenal speed. So after there was the expression of interest last Wednesday, the ABAG team and Balancing Act had a couple meetings and we developed a scope of work and we're building this now. It's at the top of Dan's development pipeline. As you can see, he's already made great progress. We think it should be ready for release, general release to all of you by this time next week and maybe even a little bit sooner. And at that point, Andy, maybe we can even do we'll do another training just to make sure that everything's knitted together just right. And if there's persistent issues that are coming up with saving sites or whatever, we can deal with those offline. So, all right, good. Well, I'm seeing some nice support for this in the chat. So we're really excited to be able to make this feature available to you. All right, anything else before we move on to just kind of more nuts and bolts about how the software works and how to make the simulation look and work the way that you want it to?
Hi, Chris. This is Pierce, City of Piedmont. I have a question. Our sites inventory is very preliminary at this point. So I would like to just know the Hess tool, can we treat it like a sandbox? Is it going to be open to the public anytime soon so that we can continue to kind of play around with possible sites?
Yeah, Pierce, you can definitely continue to treat it like a sandbox. That's why the access is still reserved for local jurisdiction staff and their housing elements consultants. And when we do develop a public facing version, it will not be as sort of granular as this kind of draft working version that you all are using now. It's meant to be kind of like a view only kind of like research tool that just, we've collected all of this interesting data, right? That's separate from like what you've actually called your sites. So I don't anticipate that the public facing, it's unclear, but I don't see the public facing tool showing kind of what you've selected, at least not your draft, right? Like maybe the final selection that's actually in your published certified housing element at some point could be published publicly, but we wouldn't put anything up there that's in a draft form for the public to see.
Great, thank you so much.
And Pierce, I don't know if this is part of your question or not, but then on the Balancing Act side, as you're building your simulation, you've got two options. You can activate it, which you should only do when you're like ready to have it be visible to the public. But then there's also a preview that it's not password protected, but it's like 500 characters long, so no one's ever gonna like stumble upon it. And that's one that you can work on yourself, see how things are looking based on the settings that you've put in, and the data you put in. And you can also share it around internally to make sure that it's the way you want it before you publish it.
Great, thanks. All
right, let's go to Garrett anything else, sorry. All right, Garrett, why don't you take it away and help us understand some of the settings and so forth.
Perfect. All right, so let me share my screen here. All right, so the first setting we'll kind of talk about our exit and entry screens. And before I go into the admin console, I just want to highlight some of what it can look like from other clients and use cases, how they're kind of making it look like. So here, this is what we call the entry screen. So this is Eastvale, and this is where they've gone ahead and put in some text about what they're doing and just some informational items about the housing element. And then they've used bolding and non-bold bolding features of text. So you can see they've had that as well. They've also embedded links here, external links, and then they've also added videos here. So that's just something to think about if you want to add it to yours. And one thing I really liked about theirs was that they actually, and this is an image that they added in here, but they branded it as Take the Arena Challenge. So they kind of gamified it a little bit for people that live within their jurisdiction. So feel free to take some ideas from this, but this is what the entry screen looks like and what you can add. And then as I click continue here, the exit and the exit modals also allow you to collect some demographic questions. So you can ask questions like here, are you a resident? Do you live within the area? And I'm going to show you actually how we can kind of create that in just a second. And then what also they've enabled is the drop a pin feature. So I think most people are familiar with this, but essentially what I can do here is I can, as a resident of the jurisdiction, I can go ahead and type in my postal code, go ahead and click go, and then I'm able to drag and drop the pin of where I live closer to. So it dropped me in the zip code that I plugged in, but maybe I live in this corner of City Park, and then I'm able to click continue. So that is what the entry screen can look like. You can just provide a lot of information, text, images, videos, so forth. And then what I want to do is actually just show you how to build one. So here from the simulate tab, you're still in your simulation. You're going to go over to your exit and entry tab here. And the first thing that you can edit are those entry questions. So here we preload a couple ones. You don't have to include them and you can create your own, which is what I'll kind of show you here. But this one, the are you a resident one, as you can see, that one was located here. So these are where those entry questions will be populated. So just going back here. And then I just want to go through kind of all the little tabs here. So order just means that what order you want these questions to appear in. When you have multiple, you can drag and drop to see which one goes first, second, third, and so forth and so forth. And then you have your question here. And then you have type. So we have different types. So you have drop down, you have text, you have long text, and I'll actually create one just to show you the different types of questions you can ask. So you don't just have to ask binary yes, no questions. And then over here, you have include, required, and repeat on exit. So if I check the include, it just means that this will be included. And then you also have the option to make it required or not. So that just means that the user on the site is required to answer this question before submission. If you don't find that necessary, you can just unclick it and you won't have to do that. So what I want to do now here is create a new entry question. So you click on the create question, you'll type in question text here, and we can say, are you happy with city housing services? And because we already had a question about, are you a resident / do you live in the area? We'll do something other than the drop down. So here you can add text, long text, ask for email address, and then that drop down is where you can add options. For now, we'll just do text. So we'll almost treat this as like a comment. So so they'll have to answer this with and it'll prompt like a text box of where users can go in and answer it that way. And then here, the CSV label, this is just what this label will look like in the column of the CSV when you export it. So here we'll just say happy. So now we'll click done. And what that did was just create another entry question. Let's include it and let's actually make it required. And then I want that one to be shown first, drag and drop, just like that. So those are the entry questions. And that's how you can add them, edit them, so forth. Now here, as I scroll down, these are exit questions. So the exit questions are actually shown in a modal that is shown prior to submission. So here, do I want, and these here are all pre-populated. You can not include them if you don't want one. Again, you can create a new exit question, just what I did up here. So let's say I want to include age range. I don't want to include gender. Don't need zip code, don't need email address, and I don't need their full address. So maybe I'm just asking for age range on that exit question. So those are the entry and exit questions. And now as I scroll down, we have some other settings here within the entry screen. So here, the first one is the enable drop a pin. So what I'm going to do here is click on that, and that will enable it. And then as a reminder, this is what the drop a pin feature looks like. So they'll be able to type in a zip code, click go. That will drop me within the zip code area, but then residents and users and people that live in your jurisdiction, they can actually drag and drop and say, you know what, maybe I live closer to City Park. And then all the data, I recommend having that just because then in the end, you'll be provided a nice heat map from the admin setting, and you'll be able to see how different areas within your jurisdiction, how they respond to where housing should be. So it's just good data to bring in. And again, you can make that required or not. For sake of this demo, let's just not make it required. And then here, this is the entry screen introduction text. So what that entails is going back to here. This is the entry screen welcome text. So this is where, again, you can plug in videos, images, text, all that. So I just want to show you how easy it is to really do that here. So we'll say, welcome, add text, and then this box gives you the ability to kind of format this. So I'm going to center it, and I'm going to make it a header. And then I'm able to provide links to external links here, embed videos here using this tool, but I'll just go ahead and add an image. So you click that image icon. We'll go in here. Let me find a nice little image. Provide some alternative text for this. So we'll just say logo, click submit, and there it is. And then you're also able to resize that, format it however you'd like, all that. So now that's what that entry screen introduction text is going to look like. And then as I continue to scroll down, this is where you can add entry screen closing text and exit screen closing text. And if you're not familiar with where this will populate, we actually have these great images over here on the right that show exactly where these will be populated. So this one, looks like it's going to be populated right before we ask all those entry screen questions. And because on that page, I've already enabled the drop a pin, let's just say, I'm going to change this and say, please provide your zip code. We'll save that. And let's say, thank you for sharing your priorities. That's pre-populated. Let's just say that we want to keep that as well. So what we just did was create our entry and exit screens. So again, we can go to preview and let's see what it looks like now. So here, this is what we added. We added welcome. We added our logo. When I click continue, these are the questions that we added. Are you happy with housing services? It's a text box option, and that red star means that it's required. So let's say, yes, I am happy. And that just means that the user has to provide an answer here before submission. And then, are you a resident? Since it's not required, maybe I don't want to answer that. And then here's the postal code again. Type it in, drag and drop it. I live over here, click continue. So that is what entry screens kind of look like. So you're able to provide information, images, links, and collect demographic data. So before I move on, are there any specific questions related to entry screens and how they can work and look like? And are there any in the chat maybe? Just because I just don't have the chat open.
I think we're good, Garrett.
Perfect. Awesome. So the next thing I want to show you are the 3 types of settings. So we have 3 types of settings of where you can input information. We have account settings, which I'm going to go through. Then we have just overall general and simulation settings. And then we have specific settings that we have for subcategory items. So we'll begin with the account settings here. So let me go back into my admin here. And for account settings, what you'll do is you'll actually go up here in the upper right-hand corner, and this says Chris Adams Anytown, but for your account, it's going to have your name and your jurisdiction. You'll click on that. You'll go to account settings. And then this is where you can actually add your jurisdiction logo. And what that will do, that will actually populate here in the upper left-hand corner. So just, I recommend always including that there. And then as I scroll down, you're able to actually change your password. So many of you have reached out to set up accounts. I provided you a password, but like I mentioned, in those emails, you can actually go here and you can change that password. So this is where you would be able to update your password just for your account. So that's account settings. And then the next one I want to go through are just general simulation settings. So again, we're just going to go back to our simulation, and we're going to go to the settings tab. And here, this is where we have some general settings. So the first general setting we have is language. So right now it's set to English. If I were to change this, I just want to be really clear that it won't translate all the content on the site. It's not going to translate content that you have input. It's going to translate some of the text strings, and text strings are items like this. So you do not have a housing plan, we'll be able to translate that into any of those languages within the drop down arrow. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but this feature is not exactly ready at the moment, but it's coming soon.
No, it's ready now. It's
ready.
the translations that are not installed yet.
Yeah, so the housing strings won't be translated yet, just because we don't have the translations back from the translators.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Dan. And then as I scroll down in these general settings, you'll notice that there's just a couple check boxes here. So the first one is, do you want to allow commenting on categories? And just as a reminder, if you do want to keep this, it won't make comments public. What this just does is it allows the user to comment on certain categories, and then all those comments are then pushed into the analytics portion, and you're able to look at it through the analytics tab, which is again over here. And then it's also placed into the CSV that you can export. And then another one that we see a lot of clients use is just being able to allow social media sharing. So after I click submission, there's a final page that shows what I just submitted and the ability to forward it along to friends, family, other neighbors via Facebook, Reddit, email, and all that. So it's a good way to get some more grassroots support and more traffic to the site, I believe. And then right here, I have it unchecked currently, but this just allows submission of unfinished housing plans. So for example, going back to here, if I were to submit this, like let's say I'm just adding a couple here, and this is all that I want to do. If I have that unchecked, this would allow me to submit this. So that's just dependent on what your jurisdiction wants to do. Do you want users to be able to submit unfinished housing plans, or do you want them to only submit finished housing plans? And that, again, is just that check mark there. And then the other one I want to highlight here is the display chart. So right now, an example of Sutherlandshire, which is just right near Sydney, Australia, actually, they've decided to keep the donut chart here because they're not using mapping. So you can select to keep the donut chart there. And as you can see, if I increase that, the colors are associated with the categories, and you can see it like that. And then if you don't want to include the donut chart because maybe you just have housing and, or sorry, the mapping component, you can look at this one. So they just have the mapping and then they don't have the donut here. And then I'm actually going to come back to this area when we talk about where you can add images. And then under the advanced tab, some of you have access to, and this is the simulation mode. So some of you have access to budgeting, and then some of you only have access to housing. So I would just make sure when you're in your admin panel that you're selected on the housing simulation mode. But if you are interested in adding the budget mode and wanting maybe like a sandbox account to kind of play with that, just feel free to reach out to Amy for that. And then as I continue to scroll down, we have the Google IDs. So what we do is we actually collect Google Analytics data, and that includes clicks and what we think, some identifying factors that we think that some of the users coming to the site are inputting here. But a lot of clients have their own Google Analytics. So you can actually type in your Google Analytics tracking ID here, and you'll be able to collect that data as well. But I just want to reinforce that this is optional because we are collecting this data and it's actually being presented to you as well. But if you want it on your own Google account, feel free to type in your tracking ID there. And then the last thing here are text customizations. So for example, the default text for when you don't have a housing plan, and that is shown right here. You don't have a housing plan. What you can do is actually you can change and edit that. So if I go back here, you don't have a housing plan, I can edit that right here. You don't have a housing plan. Let's just change it by simply adding an exclamation point. You click done there. And then when I re-preview, you'll see there's the change. You don't have a housing plan, and there's the exclamation point.
And Garrett, just to clarify, there's been some question about additional languages. Once we get the, we're get translations for all those customizations. We call them the strings, and you'll just be able to select what you want the default to be. However, if you change that somehow, you'll have to provide your own translation, and you'll have to enter it there. And then the same is true, just quickly because this was asked in chat. We translate all of the fixed pieces of the simulation, and it's going to be in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and I think simplified Chinese. But if you, whatever user specific content that you're providing will need to be done by hand, and we'll translate it by you. But we've got some techniques to make that easier. Yeah. Thank you for including that. And just to go on to that, some of the concrete text that would be changed, the text strings are like this one we can change, that one will change with different languages, and then just kind of over here, like total units will change, density allocation will change. But as Chris just illustrated, all the content that you add in here, for example, or any new content that you add, that won't be translated. So moving a little zoom thing here. So then we just went through the account settings, the simulation / general settings. The last type of setting that we can look at today is subcategory settings. So let me go back in here, and I'm going to go into our housing choices. And then I'm going to look and focus on this subcategory Oakwood. So what I'm going to do is from the customize column, scroll down and click on the 3 dots, and then click on standard plus or minus settings. So last week we actually talked about some of this. We talked about item mapping. We talked about item density. So we'll just go through the other ones here. So one of the customizable settings per subcategory that you can add is an item lock. And if a subcategory is locked, then the user cannot change its amount. So an example of this is maybe for your RENA allocation, maybe you have 500 houses that you need to find that need to be allocated. You can lock that number so people can't increase it or decrease it. So that's just an example of what we've seen from other use cases. And then here, item alert. This alert will be displayed to the user after they've attempted to make a change to this specific item. So for example, they're kind of like soft ceilings. So if I go in here and I say increase item amount, if the user increases the item amount in housing units on Oakwood here, I can provide some text in here that will then prompt a message saying something about something related to the increasing of that item.
So just a little modal will pop up. And then for item change rate, you're able to adjust the change rate in terms of percentage, or you can just have a fixed amount change rate as well. So maybe instead of percentage, you just want the increment to raise by 10 housing units every time a user clicks those plus or minus buttons. And then the last one here is the item change boundaries. So this just limits how far a user can adjust the subcategory. So we have a floor amount, and then we have a ceiling amount. And we've seen past clients use the ceiling amount to kind of combat some NIMBYism, you know, not in my backyard. So clients aren't just putting all housing units in one specific area. So for this example, for Oakwood, let's say that I just want to set the limit at 70 housing units. And then you can actually add some text here that will prompt a modal. So I can say this is the max allowed in this area. I'll go ahead and click done. Oh. Please fill in all required items. Oh, it's because I left this one blank from up there. So now when I preview and when I go into Oakwood, which is right there, it's starting at 50 housing units, but when I hit 70, which now I'm going to have to do 20 clicks here, but when I hit 70, it's going to prompt this the ceiling alert. Maximum amount has reached. This is the max allowed in this area. So those are just some of the features that you can use and some of the settings within the subcategory. Before I move on to the last section here, does anyone have any questions in regards to the type of settings?
Hey, Garrett, we're getting down to the very end, so you better just go on.
We are?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll go through this one quickly. Just adding images to your simulation. I showed you how you can add images to the entry screen, but I want to show you where you can have images in the more details and footer. So going back to this example here, within the info tab, you can actually place in images. So this client added these sorts of images. They look really nice. And where you can do that is from the more details tab. So you go into the more info area, you'll click on this plus button. And again, as a reminder, more info, this is text only. But in the more details, this is where you can include an image. So let me just grab one really quickly. And then we'll go ahead and click done. So now there's an image located in that one. And then if you want images at the bottom of your simulation, you can add them in here as well. So we'll go ahead and add an image. Let's see if I have a better one. There we go. So there's the image that I want to add, and now this is going to appear at the bottom of my simulation. Right there. And I know we're approaching the hour there, so I'll kick it back to Chris just to kind of wrap up now.
Yeah, so thank you, Garrett, for going through all of that. So that's going to, the settings are going to be how you get your simulation functioning and looking just the way you want it. Any quick questions on settings? Otherwise, I've got a question from Wendy from Sonoma. All right, so the question that Wendy asked in chat is she would like to see how you export a geometry from ArcGIS, I guess, and that's actually where there's a little bit of a boundary. So we can accept GeoJSON, and we're going to be able to also accept geometries directly from HES. But in terms of how you export it from your own software, we actually don't know that. We're not ArcGIS users. But Dan, if you have a little bit more to say about that, or Samaya, how can we be helpful to them in terms of using that their software?
Yeah, I'm going to put a link in chat that goes to a help article for at least one version of ArcGIS that explains how you can export a shape or a layer as JSON or GeoJSON. And yeah, the sad fact is I don't have a copy of ArcGIS, so I wish I could share my screen and show you. When I've done that kind of work, I've used an open source version of it, which would look unfamiliar to you. If anybody wants to share their screen, probably don't have to have time this week. Maybe next week, someone who has ArcGIS could share their screen and show us how to do this, especially if you already know how. That might be helpful for the folks who have the app, but maybe not a lot of experience with using that particular format. Does that sound like a plan? Okay, I'll get you that link, and you can tell me if that's helpful.
Yeah. Sorry, Wendy. It's just there's a lot of different software platforms out there, and it's just really it's idiosyncratic to the software platform how you export out to GeoJSON.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Maya, any thoughts on that? Because I know this is kind of your area as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have plenty of folks at ABAG who have access to ArcGIS that I could kind of tap if we need some assistance. I personally don't have the software. I used it many moons ago, but yeah, if we do need a little bit of extra support, I'm happy to get someone from our data viz team to help us out.
Yeah,
thanks.
And if that's a general question, and I know ArcGIS is one of the big platforms out there, we could even take a few minutes next week to have somebody who does have expertise and who has that software show how to do it.
Yeah, if you all are interested in that, I'm happy to try to find the right person within ABAG.
All right, good. Anything else? I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my last screen here. So once again, we're trying to treat this as sort of a peer-to-peer learning opportunity as a user group. So the plan for next week is Garrett's going to continue to add to that shared folder that everybody's been taking a look at. And so take a look at that. There's help articles, there's recordings and so forth. Continue to work on your simulations. Thank you to those of you who shared your experiences, Wendy, Andy, and others. And I think that's probably one of the more useful things is, for you in real life, trying to put this together and figuring out how we can work through challenges. Next week, we're going to actually look at the HES integration, assuming that nothing really unexpected happens. We're going to look at the analytics, so the feedback that you get. We're going to look at meeting mode, which is a way to use the tool in real-time settings, which I think is really cool. And then we're also going to look at setting up an impact. So if there's sort of a secondary impact from an action that a user takes on the simulation that you want to illustrate, we're going to show you how to set that up. And then I'm also realizing that we should also take some time to show you how to do translations as well. That was a question that came up in the chat. So sorry, we're a little bit late, but anything else before we sign off?
I did put that link in the chat for how to export GeoJSON from ArcGIS.
All right. Okay, terrific. Well, it continues to be fun and challenging to work with all of you, and we're excited to help you continue to build this public engagement tool. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.